Law enforcement, they need to have their hands untied where they can do their jobs. Right now in California, what we're doing is working by bringing in the National Guard, by bringing in the Marines right now to back them up, to protect our federal buildings, to protect the highways, to protect the citizens.
One question. The administration has talked a lot about defending law enforcement over the last week or so that these protests are going on, but you've been criticized for having a double standard with the president pardoning all these people who attacked police officers on January 6th in his first day in office. How do you answer that criticism?
Well, this is very different. These are people out there hurting people in California right now. This is ongoing, no longer. We're going to protect them. We're going to do everything we can to prosecute violent criminals in California. California is burning. These people are waving Mexican flags, yet they don't want anyone to go back to Mexico. They're burning American flags. This is the United States of America, and we're going to protect Americans. We're going to protect all citizens out there. Thank you. You guys have a great day.
That they are righteous, and they're still using violence, force, intimidation, all for a political aim. That's terrorism.
After hearing tales of violence and rioting coming out of LA, tales all spun, of course, and amplified by the Trump administration, records now show that Border Patrol agents gave inaccurate testimony about the LA protesters that they arrested and jailed last month. From The Guardian, the officers' testimony was cited in at least 5 cases filed by the U.S. Department of Justice amid the unrest. The Justice Department has charged at least 26 people with assaulting and impeding federal officers and other crimes during the protests over immigration raids. Prosecutors, however, have since been forced to dismiss at least 8 of those felonies, many of them which relied on officers' inaccurate reports, court records show. The Justice Department has also dismissed at least 3 felony assault cases it brought against Angelenos accused of interfering with arrests during recent immigration raids, the documents show. So that's embarrassing, but also probably not very surprising. Many of us knew that the reports coming out of LA were probably nonsense, or that they were at least blown way out of proportion. I live in Texas, but most of the TYT team is based in LA, and they were all fine. My friends out there said that they were fine. If anything, there were 1 to 2 blocks that were bad with things like, breaking into businesses, setting cars on fire, blocking highways. But that does kind of explain why a lot of the footage that we kept seeing of these riots that were allegedly so widespread, we kept seeing the same 1 to 2 blocks over and over again. We kept seeing the same footage recycled over and over again. Still, the message was received by the intended audience. I mentioned recently to a right-winger that I wanted to go to LA soon, and she was legitimately concerned for my safety. But why wouldn't they believe that LA was now a disaster zone? Trump told his supporters himself in a Truth Social post that if he hadn't illegally mobilized the California National Guard against American citizens, that LA, quote, would be burning to the ground right now. And you can't blame people for believing testimony given on official arrest documents. People still believe that cops and so-called law enforcement officers are, without question, good people. They believe that somehow these people are without moral fault, and that if it is their job to uphold the law, then that is exactly what they will do 100% of the time. The reality is that law enforcement, as much as any institution, is fallible, and its individuals are susceptible to dishonesty, even corruption. The Guardian reviewed the records concerning these arrests with false and misleading testimonies, and here is what was found. Out of 9 assault and impeding felony cases, the Justice Department filed immediately after the start of the protests and promoted by Attorney General Pam Bondi, prosecutors dismissed 7 of them soon after filing the charges. In reports that led to the detention and prosecution of at least 5 demonstrators, Department of Homeland Security agents made false statements about the sequence of events and misrepresented incidents captured on video. One DHS agent accused a protester of shoving an officer when footage appeared to show the opposite. The officer forcefully pushed the protester. One indictment named the wrong defendant, a stunning error that has jeopardized one of the government's most high-profile cases. Christine Soto DeBerry, a former California state prosecutor, had this to say about the dismissals. When I see felonies dismissed, that tells me either the federal officers have filed affidavits that are not truthful and that has been uncovered, or U.S. attorneys reviewing the cases realize the evidence does not support the charges. It seems this is a way to detain people, hold them in custody, instill fear, and discourage people from exercising their First Amendment rights. Even though these cases eventually got dismissed, the demonstrators that were arrested all spent time in jail for crimes that they did not commit, all because Trump and his administration and Stephen Miller had an agenda to push, so much so that they were willing to make false claims, exacerbating opposition to their policies, attempting to make those who oppose their horrendous policies look like the bad guys. But I spoke earlier about the fact that law enforcement officers are prone to lying just like the rest of us are. It's hard to accept because we like to feel as though we can trust the institutions that run our lives, and by extension, that we can trust the people that run those institutions. However, that has never fully been the case, and now it is even less so. Perhaps there was once a time when fear of consequence and oversight, checks and balances even, would actually keep people in line. It would incentivize them to behave properly and to act in accordance with rules, regulations, and guardrails, and it would disincentivize deviant behavior. Our systems have never been perfect, and there have always been people who behave badly and get away with it. But lately, many of the guardrails that had once worked to keep most people in line, those have now been removed. Recently, a former attorney with the Department of Justice turned Department of Justice whistleblower came forward alleging that he was fired from his job after 15 years for refusing to provide false testimony, specifically in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Speaking with the New York Times, Erez Ruvani explained that the Trump DOJ is very different from the department under previous administrations. Whether there was a Democrat or a Republican president in the White House, the rules of the DOJ never changed. They're not supposed to. The DOJ is not supposed to work for or under the president, even though that is exactly what's happening now. Ruvani had worked under several administrations, Democrat and Republican, even defending some controversial policies that did not personally agree with his own politics. But the second Trump administration was all kinds of unprecedented. He said, "Look, I've been a DOJ attorney for 15 years, and the things that I experienced in that 3-week window from March 14th to April 5th when I was suspended are unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it." So I've come forward because the Trump administration has put civil servants in this impossible position of fealty to the president and the agenda, or fealty to uphold the Constitution and to uphold the rule of law. And time again during those 3 weeks, I was put to the question, which side am I going to be on? And ultimately, I didn't sign up to lie to a court. And that's the position I was put in, and that's the position others are being put in, and that's why I've come forward. When the new administration took office, attorneys at the DOJ were told for the first time to outright deny court orders if they conflicted with the president's political agenda. Emil Bove is a senior political appointee at the DOJ who had previously worked as Trump's personal lawyer. Ruvani recalls a meeting that was led by Bove, saying he tells everyone in attendance that this invocation of the Alien Enemies Act to remove certain Venezuelan nationals is of the highest importance to the White House. After a pause, emphasizing to everyone again in the room, those planes have to take off, quote, no matter what. And then there's another pause there. And then this is the thing that sets the tone for the next 3 weeks. Bove says, and if some court were to issue some order that prevents that from happening, we would have to consider telling that court, quote, F you. Later, when the Department of Homeland Security wrongfully deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the press was hot, saying the administration's immigration policies and the execution of those policies were misguided and inhumane. People demanded the return of Garcia to U.S. soil, but in an attempt to spin the PR aspect of the deportation, the administration and right-wingers tried to say that Garcia was a very dangerous man, as if to say, that even if they had, in fact, wrongfully deported him without having any evidence of wrongdoing on his part, it was ultimately for the best anyway, because as luck would have it, it turns out he was a really bad guy. The administration was so keen to push this storyline that it attempted to have members of the DOJ provide false testimony corroborating those false claims. Ravaney said, "So I go to court and the judge asked me, among other things, do you concede that it was error to remove Mr. Abrego Garcia? And I, of course, have no choice but to say yes. Saying anything but that would have been a lie." So the hearing ends, and right away my phone is sort of blowing up. Calls coming in particular from the Deputy Assistant Attorney General in charge of immigration litigation. And so just to be clear, he's my boss's boss. And he asked me, why did I not argue that Abrego was a terrorist at that argument? It's not something we argued in our legal papers, and it's not something supported by the facts, so that's why that didn't come out of my mouth. So he hangs up, calls back again a few minutes later, asks the same question, says the White House wants to know why you didn't argue that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a terrorist. I have the same answers. And soon afterwards, we get an outline of a brief that basically makes these arguments that he is a terrorist, that he's a dangerous MS-13 individual. Whistleblower accounts still need to be corroborated, of course, but the fact that this is a thing that we're starting to see more of is really discouraging, to say the absolute least. Corruption takes a long time to take hold within an institution. It involves the complicity of several players. It involves the removal of those who refuse to play along, and it culminates in the rewriting of historical precedents. That is what we are now witnessing with this administration, nothing less. It is the deliberate and systematic corruption of institutions that are supposed to protect American citizens. This administration does not care about any of us, all right? That is it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.